NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg taking a surprise trip to Ukraine today. Some other positive developments for the embattled nation as the U.S. Patriot guided missile system arrives in the country.
NATO members are also pledging more support, even as Russia tries to prevent Ukraine's involvement with NATO. Foreign correspondent Shelby Wilder is live in Kyiv with the details. Shelby.
Well, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg made a surprise visit to Kyiv today, his first trip to the country since the full-scale invasion began. Stoltenberg has been a vocal supporter of Ukraine and has called on NATO members to supply arms to the country and help Ukrainian forces. And it is undeniable that the NATO bloc has been essential in aiding Ukraine since this war began. One example of that today is that NATO members, the Netherlands and Denmark, agreed to supply 14 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. Separately, yesterday, the Ukrainian Defense Minister, Alexei Reznikov, said that the U.S. Patriot defense missile system had arrived in the country. And he said that this was a dream because it was vital for protecting Ukrainian airspace, but especially somewhere like Kyiv, where I am right now, which frequently comes under Russian attack. And this item had really been at the top of Kyiv's wish list. They are extremely grateful to have received this. And we know that Ukrainian troops had been training in Oklahoma on these missile defense systems. But going back to Stoltenberg, immediately after his visit here in Kyiv today with President Zelensky, the Kremlin immediately pushed back. And Russia said that one of its key goals remains blocking Ukraine from joining NATO. We know that Russian President Putin has long opposed the expansion of NATO, but ultimately, since his war in Ukraine, it has only grown, and many would say strengthened, because now Finland has joined the bloc and Sweden is poised to do so if it can get approval from NATO members of Hungary and Turkey. The next NATO summit will take place in July, and Jens Stoltenberg invited Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to attend that today. And it is undeniable that Ukraine and its desires to join the bloc will be at the top of the agenda. And that is the latest for me here on the ground in Kyiv.
Shelby Wilder, thank you so much. Now, NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg visiting Kyiv, as we mentioned, first time since Russia's invasion last year, saying Ukraine's rightful place is in NATO.
And joining us to discuss, former Republican congressman from New York and retired U.S. Marine Michael Grimm, plus retired Brigadier General U.S. Air Force and U.S. Deputy Military Representative to NATO, Blaine Holt. General Holt, first want to get your thoughts on this. Should they or shouldn't they be part of NATO?
Well, maybe someday, but probably not today. So if you wanted to bring them into NATO, which I highly doubt they would have the votes for to make that happen, you're inheriting a war. Now NATO's faced with Article 5 declaration, and we're faced with the prospects of an immediate turn to World War III. But what I see deeper into this, Katrina, is Secretary General Stoltenberg is laying on pressure in advance of the NATO summit in the direction of Russia, meaning we're going to start actively talking about bringing them into the alliance. And this is on the eve of a counteroffensive, which we expect Ukraine to be launching soon. If that has credibility to it, it is going to ratchet up the pressure in the Kremlin. They are watching more NATO borders along their frontier. And so maybe this gets people to the proper negotiating table. But by itself, no, Ukraine is not about to become a member of NATO.
And Michael, as the general talked about, Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all, and we find ourselves committed to any NATO country, including Ukraine. Right now, even if they're playing this little game where, we're going to let them in eventually, shouldn't there be some peace talks going on behind the scenes? Shouldn't the U.S., shouldn't the NATO be pushing for something and not just let China run the game?
Well, it's a great question, Bob, but it just comes down to leadership that the United States just hasn't had in recent time. In any really foreign issue whatsoever, Biden has been consistently wrong, whether you'll go back to Afghanistan, that deplorable withdrawal from there, and he just doesn't have the presence on the world stage, and that vacuum has been, as we know, filled by China. So China is really the one that's brokering deals, and that's a big problem. But I want to just take a step back. You know, are we in or are we out? Regardless of whether Ukraine is an actual official NATO member, let's be honest, we're supporting them. We're sending arms, we're sending money, we're training their troops. Reports are that we possibly have boots on the ground. We need to confirm that. But I think, what you're seeing now, especially after this leak that says that Ukraine is inherently weak, and now Russia knows some of our techniques to get their information to give to them. This is a game changer, I think, and we're going to see NATO probably ratchet up the amount of arsenals and munitions and so on they give them.
Yeah, great points, Michael. And also during the visit, the Secretary General went on to add that membership and security guarantees for Ukraine will be high on the agenda of the NATO summit in July. General Holt, your thoughts?
Well, they need to have above that logistics supportability, because we need to have the munitions that Ukraine needs. We need to have the commitments. We need to find out about this intel that was just released and whether we have troops on the ground. We need to find out, is in fact Ukraine winning this war, or is Russia in a better position than we were initially told? There's not enough transparency here, and certainly not enough transparency with how the dollars are spent. So it's very, very hard for us to get an adequate view about what's happening. What I can say is, without the proper logistics support, Ukraine's going to be very hard pressed to make a big difference. Meanwhile, the Russians are openly stating they want to see an end to the war, and they're making overtures towards negotiations, none of which we have seen answered yet by D.C.
Yeah, and Michael Grimm, a lot of folks concerned about how long this war could go on. RFK Jr. brought it up yesterday, and his family should know something about wars that go on for a long time.
No question. I think RFK Jr. is an example of what you're going to be seeing coming into these primaries. Ukraine will play, a role on this center stage, because a lot of Americans, especially now that the economy is so bad, are wondering why we're spending so much money in Ukraine and not on the American people. And that, I think, is going to be a bit of a political football.
All right, Michael Grimm, General Holt, thank you so much for being with us.
Have a great day.
Thanks for having me.
You too.